I don't have to change. She was so adamant, so determined, so convinced she was right. Probably the loudest argument ever. And that was all the words that came out of it. In fact, right after it was a click and a dial tone. And that kind of attitude is what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Master the story power method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with Story Power. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. That was a real phone call. That was a real comment. See, at the time I was driving a truck delivering office products and office furniture and things of that nature. And so throughout the course of the day, I would call on probably 20 to 25, sometimes more, retail office places, colleges, churches, office complexes, you name it. If they use office supplies, I was there to see them. And I was usually seeing the person who was either reception or the purchasing director, somebody like that. And all of them had someone who was front-facing, customer-facing, cordial, polite. They knew how to deal with the public. They had to deal with them on a regular basis. Now, there were times that I showed up in my shorts and a t-shirt because it was hot and that was a lot of manual labor. But they still offered me water, offered me a soft drink. They were cordial. They were polite to me. Meanwhile, I got this phone call, and as I called back, the answer was like, hello. It was almost like, what do you want? Like the phone call calling inbound was an interruption, and it wasn't what I was used to with people who were facing the public. In fact, the person answering the phone actually worked for the crisis center, meaning most of the people calling there, they're either looking to make a donation or they're in trouble and they need help. And my expectation was this would be a bubbly, lovable, almost syrupy, sweet kind of a person answering the phone, and that wasn't what I got. And after a brief conversation, I said, you know, given your job, I would think you'd be a lot more polite, a lot more kind, a lot more sweet to the public. I mean, these were before the days that caller ID was really common. And so they had no idea who was calling, if it was me or, you know, whoever else. And the answer I got was, I don't have to change. Now, I have to be honest and tell you, that person who didn't have to change then has been my bride for over 30 years now. And there's been a lot of change. A lot of personality changes, a lot of relationship changes, a lot of understanding changes, not just in her, but in me and in us together. See, there's a real challenge in the attitude of leadership when you have leaders who are adamant, leaders who are forthright, who are very assertive, who are very determined to get their point across. They will articulate clearly and loudly so that everyone understands exactly what they're saying. You've probably been around people like that, perhaps parents like that, perhaps in a relationship with someone like that. I have been that person, and I've been in relationships with persons like that. But see, the attitude that demonstrates itself that way in leadership, it has a label. It's called pride. And there's a difference between pride and confidence. not a lot of difference between pride and arrogance, but they do go together. But see, the confidence that sometimes is an asserted confidence, not a real confidence, it's actually a demonstration of a genuine insecurity. And so in order to make myself believe that I'm confident, in order to make myself believe I got this all figured out, I know what I'm talking about, I'm not wrong. In my early days, I would talk louder, I would talk faster, I would be more assertive. Even when I knew there was a chance I didn't have all the facts. But my opinion was strong. I had a lot of pride, a lot of ego, a lot of verbosity. And since I have a strong, powerful voice, I have all my life. It's a little wispy right now with the sinuses, but usually it's very powerful and very clear. And so when I assert myself, when I raise my voice, when I get very clear and very bold, some people get intimidated. And early on, it was my leadership style to do that on purpose. Because people who are a little bit unsure of themselves would back down. They would cower. They would submit. And even when I was wrong, if I was assertive enough, people would see it my way, even if my way was wrong. I pray I'm not that guy anymore. I've been that guy. My quiet little wife, that one time that she said, I don't have to change, and basically yelled at me, that's not her nature. Really never has been her nature. It's not her nature now. But now her assertiveness, her boldness is a quiet kind of a confidence. It's the confidence that I've done my homework. I'm not going to speak up until I know what I'm talking about. But by the time I say something, you better know I've done my homework. I've done my research. I know what I'm talking about. I've been through this cycle more than one time. I get it. And what I'm going to give you may not be loud, may not be boisterous, it may not be verbose, but it's going to be accurate to the best of my ability. And if you risk missing that, it's your loss. Years ago, we did pre-marriage counseling together. When we'd been married about 15 years, we were working with couples who were just about to get married. And I remember telling them on the first week, we're only going to be together 6 weeks. In this 6 weeks of time, I'm going to do the majority of the talking because she just doesn't talk. That's not her thing. She doesn't like to talk a lot. But if she goes to the trouble to say something to you in these sessions, I want you to understand how much trouble she's gone through to have that bubble up in her to reach the surface and then to express it. You're probably going to see her gripping my hand. You might see some little red stress marks around her neck and around her chest as she's really not super comfortable doing that. And if she goes to that much trouble for you to get that answer, you'd be crazy to leave it on the table, to not take it up with all that you have, hold on to it, ask questions about it, dig into it as deep as you can, and consider it, because she didn't throw it out there for nothing. She's not the type that likes to hear herself talk. So if she does talk, you should be listening. And there were a couple of times that people, they discounted that. In fact, we got called into the pastor's office. Dr. Johnny Kane called us in. He's like, hey, I need to know what gives with this. People feel like you abuse her because she doesn't get to talk in these sessions. And so he asked me to leave the room, and about 20 minutes later, he calls me back in. He says, hey, how do you make her talk? I said, you can't make her talk. She talks when she feels like she just can't hold it in any longer. Now, as a platform speaker and as a coach, she has a different demeanor than that. But generally speaking, in a crowd of people, she's going to smile, she's going to love on people, she's going to hug people. It's not her demeanor to take over the room. She doesn't have to. Her quietness is bold, and that's what takes over the room. She's never in a room that she's ignored. She's never in a place where people are like, oh, I didn't realize you were there. That doesn't happen. But when she's there, she doesn't have to say as many words as I do to get people's attention. She doesn't have to say as many things as I do assertively to get people to listen. There was a time that I was coaching a client who had traveled in from Maryland, Baltimore, and was in the Dallas area for a short period of time. And because this client was female, and I don't meet with female clients one-on-one, we met mutually in Dallas at another client of mine's conference room. We had scheduled to use it for the entire day, and about halfway through the day, clients' conference room, they sat in to make sure that everything was above board. While we were having our session, somebody else came in and said, hey, we need to do a quick meeting. Can we just use the conference room for half an hour? They needed to do a brainstorm mastermind meeting for a marketing expansion of a book that was about to go to press. And I said, sure, we can go to lunch and hang out, or we can go down the hall and wait until you guys are done. And they're like, no, we'd love to have your brilliance in the room. So have a seat and join us. And so my client and I sat in on this other meeting. They didn't know we were going to be there. We didn't know we were going to be there. Nobody had any idea, but it was a fit, so we stayed. And I listened as they went around the room, and everyone in the room gave advice to this new author, would-be speaker, moving into this new realm. And as I listened to the advice, it sounded a lot like almost every other mastermind that I've been to. And by that I mean, it was canned platitudes. It was the newest trendy idea that was available on social media at the time. It was the most brilliant thing they'd heard on YouTube in the last 24 hours. Not to say that any of it was wrong, not to say that any of it was right, but even noticing myself, observing, I was quiet. I didn't say anything until it came my turn. I noticed that there were, person A would throw out, well, this is what I heard most recently on YouTube, or this is my research. And then person B would kind of rebut that idea and throw in a couple of new ones. And person C would either up the game or say, no, that's all outdated. We need to do it this way. And it went all the way around the table that way. And by the time it got to me, I realized all of these are platitudes. None of these are exercised. Not one of the pieces of advice given so far have actually been done by the person who gave the advice. They haven't actually tried that. They don't know if it'll work or not. I mean, they heard the sales pitch of how great this idea was, but they've never tested the idea. They don't know for sure if it works or not. And that kind of stuck in my craw a little bit. But the other thing that stuck in my craw was that all of these people who had given advice, their advice almost sounded like it was given in a vacuum. And by that I mean they hadn't asked the person that the mastermind was being held for any questions. They had really no in-depth understanding of what the process or the product or the project or the problem was. And one of the things that I work with my clients on, even today, I was working with a client and I said, I understand you have this great illustration. I think it's a great illustration. It's great for communicating to your audience what you do. I'm asking this question though. If your client, your ideal client, had to translate your illustration into their language, what is the problem as they see it? Not what is the problem that you offer to help. What is the problem they have? And they may be the same. It may be that your solution will solve their problem, but they don't call their problem what you call their problem. They have a different name for it. They have different nomenclature for it. They have a different category of pain for that. And part of our job as coaches, as solution providers, is to help people identify the pain that they have, identify the problem they have, put words to that so that our solution makes sense for that problem. And as I'm listening around the table, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people go, well, I have the salt and pepper. Yeah, salt and pepper. I have the salad dressing. Huh, awesome. Forget salad dressing, forget salt and pepper. I've got the marinara sauce. I'm thinking, well, you've all got great recipes. It sounds like a phenomenal menu, but nobody knows what the protein is and nobody knows what the vegetables are. We're missing the main course and we're adding all of our own condiments to it. That doesn't make any sense. And so when it came to me, I hit them with 5 or 6 questions that had come to mind and got some very solid answers, which very quickly almost negated all of the other advice. Ironic, but common, unfortunately, in many masterminds. People like to take their newest information, the thing that's risen to the top, and whether it's tried and tested or not, this is what I know today, try this. And by the way, let me know if it works, because I haven't tried it yet. It's a common theme in masterminds. It's a repeated theme in small group environments where small group coaching is taking place, where nobody wants to ask questions because everyone wants to be the answer provider. They know something. They're going to declare it. They're going to assert it. They're going to be confident about it. And the truth is, they're a little insecure because they never tried it. They don't really know. But they don't want to be seen as someone who could stand corrected. In that moment, I just operated what, as I am continuing to grow older and hopefully a little more mature along the way, I realized I had done wrong for the last 10 or 15 years. And in that moment, I listened, I asked questions, and then I shared my advice. Some opinion, some tested advice, some, hey, maybe you need to be asking these questions. When the meeting was over and everybody left except my client that I had scheduled to meet there with, we had another 3 hours of our day left. My client looked at me and said, I'm absolutely blown away. You probably had more insight, more advice than anybody else at the table. And you never challenged anybody else's idea. You only asked questions and gave your advice based on the questions. Why did nobody else do that? I don't know, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. 5 years ago, I would have been full of opinions and argued with everybody at the table because I didn't see it the way they saw it. Salt and pepper, we don't need salt and pepper, we're making Pop-Tarts. Salad dressing, who wants salad dressing on their Pop-Tarts? Marinara sauce on Pop-Tarts. No, that's not the right solution. What is wrong with you? That would have been my approach 5 years before. Even today, I want to listen more, I want to ask questions, I want to observe, I want to ask myself as I'm reading other books, as I'm studying, as I'm learning new things, are they valuable to the client in front of me? And even now, I still have that, this is the newest thing that I've been studying, this is what matters to me, it's what's on the tip of my tongue and the top of my mind, and I want to get it out there. Sometimes I just want to take that idea out for a walk and have somebody go, is that really a dog? But I restrain myself. I hold it back and I ask the question, is it going to be relevant to them? Does it matter to them? Am I just sharing my idea because it feels good to me, or am I sharing an idea that I genuinely believe will move the needle for them? And if it's the former, I work a little harder to hold my tongue, to hold it in, until I know that I built that relationship of trust with them. I have clients right now who will tell you at about 6 a.m. when I'm having my own quiet time and doing my own research and I'm away from the rest of the world, between 5:30 and 6:30 in the morning, you may get some of the strangest things in the world. If you're one of my clients, you may get the strangest things in the world in your Facebook Messenger. But I will never waste your time. And I will always poke you, provoke you, evoke you to think more deeply about what you're thinking about. Maybe think differently about what you're thinking about. But it will not be a waste of your time. It will not be boring, mundane. I didn't have anything else to say, so I thought I'd throw this out there. It will always be something that you're going to look at and go, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's pretty important, or that makes me think about it deeper. And some of these things are not even my way of thinking. They provoke me too. They challenge me too. They make me feel like, well, I thought I understood that. Apparently I was wrong. But when I share them with my clients, it brings up more conversation for our one-on-one time. Why? Because I want to be the kind of leader who leads with the attitude of humility that says, I could be wrong, and if I am, I want to know. I mean, I genuinely want to know. I want you to tell me, here's why I think you're wrong, and here's what I think should change. I'm not only okay with that, I long for it. Now, don't come to me and tell me that I'm wrong when you haven't done your homework, because I will push back. Don't come to me and tell me that I'm wrong because my opinion and your opinion are not the same. I'm okay with that. But if my data is wrong, if my understanding is wrong, I just watched one of those little auto repair videos. He's ranking up there with cops right now in the moments of discovery. Pulls up, lady stuck in the parking lot, hood's up, she's holding a sign, just need a jump. He rolls up his center, he's like, I'm not sure a jump is what you need. You got a whole trail of oil leading to your parking spot. She opens the hood, she said, well, we just replaced the head gasket in it, and now it's doing X, Y, and Z. He goes, well, can you crank it? And she did. He's like, whoop, stop doing that. It's making an awful noise. He starts taking things apart, and what he finds is whoever did the job before didn't tighten down the bolts on the head. They used the wrong kind of seal on the timing chain cover. They used the wrong kind of seal on the water pump. They put sealant on the oil pan gasket, which really shouldn't have that on it unless it's heat resistant, oil resistant gasket seal that goes along with the gasket. Because usually the oil pan doesn't come off unless you're doing major repairs. Basically, whoever worked on our car before created a bigger disaster than the problem they solved. Now, his observation skills were based on his expertise. And so within a couple of minutes, he was able to look at it and go, you have a much bigger problem than you just need jumped. However, because she had just replaced the head gasket, when he walked up before any diagnosis, before ever touching it, she said, I think the problem is the throttle position sensor. Well, could be. Would you be okay if I gave you a real diagnosis from someone who knows what they're talking about? Because obviously whoever did your head gasket has no clue. At minimum, they get to do all that work over again because holy cow, they made a mess. But if the diagnosis you have that it's a throttle position sensor, that's like saying my battery is dead so my trunk keeps opening. I'm not sure those are related. Now, I can tell you, we used to have a car. This is no exaggeration. We used to have a car that if you were driving down the highway and you wanted to set the cruise control, you had to turn off the AC compressor before you could hit the cruise control button. And if you honked the horn while driving down the highway, the trunk lid would pop open. And you would have to stop the car and get out and close the trunk. And if you hit the brakes and turn off the cruise control, you'd have to turn the AC back off to get the cruise control to set again. So don't honk at people in traffic or you're going to get hot in the car. True story. It was a 1997 Chrysler Cordoba. Cherry red in color. Yeah, it was a beautiful car. It had issues. Sometimes you get weird little issues like that, but generally speaking, the horn and the trunk lid are not related to each other. The throttle position sensor and the oil pan leaking, not related to each other. How many times have you worked with someone who is adamant about the solution they've already prescribed? They already know what it is that you need to fix. They know what you need to do. They know what your problem is. They have a solution for you, but they've never asked you about the actual symptoms of the problem that you're trying to solve. Like all the people around the table in the mastermind, they all have an opinion. They've all studied something recently. They've all listened to the latest gurus and experts. But their solutions are not relevant to your problem, and they haven't bothered to ask you what your problem is yet. See, a leader who operates with an attitude of humility, they consider how they think, how they feel about the thoughts that they have. They consider the thoughts that they have about the emotions that they respond to. And they put those two together and they realize that's an attitude. Is it pride or is it humility? Am I so determined that everybody's going to do it my way that I plow through people? I just keep pounding them until I get what I want, whether it's wrong or otherwise. Or do I have the humility to sit back and listen long enough to get all of the data before I try to make a decision, to even ask some more relevant questions before I prescribe an answer? Can you imagine walking into your primary care physician's office and going, you know what, I'm just experiencing a high level of pain today. Excellent. Let me tell you what to do. You got the wrong shoes on. Go change your shoes and come back and see me in 10 days and tell me if you feel better. You might look at your physician and go, yeah, but what does that got to do with my toothache? What does that have to do with my headache? Why does my neck hurt? And genuinely, there may be some answers to that that are related. One of my clients is an acupuncturist. And recently we were talking about doing stem cell injections, and they said, you know, a lot of people want you to do a sonogram before you do stem cell injection because they want to make sure that you're putting it in the right place. I'm like, okay, is that a bad idea? They're like, a sonogram might tell you what you see in that physical space, but it's not going to tell you about the nerve endings that are connected elsewhere. And if you know anything about reflexology or acupuncture, you know that sometimes what's going on in the ear can be solved out here. And what's going on in your gut can be solved in the palm of your hand. And what's going on in your knee joint is actually a hip problem or a foot problem. And trying to solve the wrong problem isn't going to fix it. They call that solving the symptom and not the root cause. I went to see a chiropractor about a year ago, dealing with a little bit of pain in my hip. Riding my motorcycle, I get off, I try to stand up, and one leg is numb. That's not fun. My bike's almost 700 pounds. I want to be able to stand up and get off the bike without it falling on me or me falling on the ground. So I go to see the chiropractor. And after some adjustments and some movements and some x-rays and some conversation, I stand up from my seat. And the chiropractor goes, hang on. How long ago did you fall on your back? I'm like, wait, fall on my back? He said, yeah, you fell on your back, you landed crooked, or you landed on something. I said, 35 years ago when I was on active duty in the Air Force, the truck took off. I fell off the back of the fire truck, landed on my air pack with about 200 pounds of hose over me. He said, yeah. As a result, your pelvic region is not aligned with your spine. And it's not only tilted left, right, but it's tilted forward, backward. That's what we need to fix. If we can get your pelvic area realigned, your hips realigned with your shoulders, then all of those muscles will have a chance to reform and you're going to be in a lot better condition. I was like, so you're telling me my knees and my hips hurt because my hips are not aligned with my shoulders? He said, well, yeah. I mean, I didn't notice it until you stood up just then, but the way you stand up tells me you have a deeper problem that needs to be solved that way. And all of the other things that we do will not solve that problem until we get to that problem. If you've ever worked for a leader who's so adamant that they already know the answer, that they will proclaim it louder and more forcefully until you comply, until you submit, you might have an attitude problem. And if you find yourself being the kind of leader who feels like I've just got to pronounce it louder, more clearly, more assertively, because if I'm not confident, then people are going to run over me. They'll think I'm a weak leader. They'll think I'm submissive. They'll think I have no power. All of those thoughts in your head cause you to feel a certain way. That's called an attitude. You're thinking what you think they're thinking, and you're feeling a certain kind of way as a result of it. If you find yourself in that place, you, my friend, need the attitude hack. You need to get involved in this course. You need to listen to the thoughts that are going on in your head and the feelings, the emotions that come up with them. And you need to ask yourself, am I asserting myself to solve a solution, a problem, a symptom, or a root cause? Am I asserting myself because I'm insecure and I'm afraid somebody's going to take my job? In the Attitude Hack, we're going to talk through some of those things. Attitude Hack is a 6-week course. The first class for you to participate in drops on Tuesday, June 9th. Jump in. Our first discussion will be the following Tuesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to talk about everything you learned in Lesson 1, and we're going to have a group discussion around those concepts. And I'm going to challenge you to get involved in this, because if you're a leader not operating in the attitude of humility, your time as a leader is short. You may not realize that now, but that blinking light in the corner, yep, that's your career dissipation light. It's getting brighter. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership.